Hello, welcome to the 94th episode of Unifying Force. I'm Kat, joined by Dave and Gio. How is everybody?
Good morning and or afternoon. Or is it you on mute there, Gio?
That was a little strange. Sorry about that. Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, what time you're taking this in. Thanks for joining us.
All right, so this past Friday we hit a major milestone, the 50th anniversary of this little movie here, Jaws. Yes. I find it interesting that most of the re-release will be in late August.
At the right. End of August.
Really?
Well, and I noticed that I did a rewatch in the last couple of days when I looked up some stuff on IMDb, they're releasing a documentary, Jaws at 50. But they're not releasing it until July 11th. It may go up opposite Superman.
Yeah, they premiered it at a theater somewhere, and Spielberg gave an introduction for it. And it sounds like it's exclusively going to be available somewhere, maybe Peacock or something. I think was the one making it, and then it's going to end up on Hulu and Disney Plus.
It makes sense that it's on Peacock. I rewatched Jaws on Peacock, and
yeah, Universal movie. So that's
and there was already a a short introduction, a brief introduction to the film by Spielberg.
Yeah, I saw that. It was that the introduction was uploaded to YouTube with a little trailer accompanying it. I rewatched it on Friday night. I did see it in IMAX on September 2nd.
Yeah, but I mean, it completely makes sense, and yeah, it makes sense, and it makes sense to talk about Jaws at 50 because it's a mere 2 years before we're going to be talking about Star Wars at 50. And Jaws really was the very first summer blockbuster.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I saw this in IMAX a few years ago, and the transfer is pretty good. Seeing it on a big screen. Oh, your audio went out again. Are you there?
Hopefully momentarily.
Yeah, my internet is being extremely a pain today.
Yeah, your video and audio isn't exactly synced on my end. Okay.
Yeah, it's a very slow today, I think.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
You're back.
So yeah,
you're saying about the IMAX. How was that experience for you?
That was really cool because I was like the only person in the theater. Because rather than showing it at a prime viewing time, they aired it early in the afternoon on like a Wednesday or something, which was very weird. And they gave out free posters, and I mean, the transfer is probably as good as the 4K transfer they did a few years ago in 2020. Because that's the version I got here. I got 5 years ago. But I think the sound is really what benefits, like that John Williams score in an IMAX theater. It's like, dun, 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 dun. Like that's usually what. Like I just saw last Saturday, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade in a regular theater for the first time, and the sound is really what benefits the most. So IMAX for that was pretty cool, and I guess really what made this movie here a blockbuster was that it just became this mega hit out of nowhere. They didn't really plan it that way. They weren't even, because this movie notoriously went way over budget. It was supposed to be shot in 2 months, from like May to May through the end of
Yeah, I think
early May
the
to the end of
original
June.
schedule was
Yeah.
like 55 days.
55 days, and it ended up going all the way through from May through September. And Spielberg said he was convinced he was never going to be able to make a movie again, but everybody loved it, and he's like, the audience bailed him out.
Yeah, well, and the studio apparently did not have any confidence in releasing it because, for whatever reason, at that point, the movies that were not expected to do well were what was released in the summertime. There were no summer blockbusters. They were just the country in general was outside doing things. They didn't go to movies in the summer. This was originally scheduled as like a Christmas release, which is, was the big blockbuster type at that point. But this drew people in out the beaches, essentially, which kind of makes sense because it's a movie about that. It just created it.
Yeah, and it's funny because during pre-production, the producers wisely said, "Look, we're going to strip everything out of the book that's not pertinent to this being an adventure story." And they're going to boost things, change other things to make it better. Like in the book, Matt Hooper is not a likable character very much, and he has an affair with the chief's wife. And it's
kind
like,
of none of them are.
None of them are. I read a funny review on. Yeah, I read a funny review on Letterboxd that says a story about 3 alcoholics who go to try and kill an innocent shark for the crime of being hungry.
It's a good, accurate alternative synopsis.
And I think my favorite review from somebody else was The Great White Nope. It's like, these are great. I wrote a mock review the other day when I watched it, and I said, if this were a criminal case, it would not be charged with the USS Indianapolis sinking, because those were oceanic white tips, because great whites are warm water coastal sharks. And besides, Quint mistakenly says it was June 29th when it was actually July 29th. And, you don't see the great white very much at all in the movie, so you can't really say definitively it was a great white. And then the one scene where it's indistinguishable that it's a great white when it's killing Quint, kills him in self-defense because he's trying to murder him and shot him 3 times. So that's a winnable case for the defense. And I mean, I know this is a movie where they said that they wanted the people to be afraid of going into the water, like, oh, we're going to do for the beach what Psycho did for the shower. And it's like, I never really considered this a horror movie. Like, constantly this makes the top spot along with The Exorcist on the scariest movies of all time. And I don't think either of them are horror films.
I think we're a little jaded. I think in the 70s there were the jump scares and people literally were afraid of this. There are people who are afraid, people do now, and people who won't go to it, in like a pool, and they'll put it up on a big screen and you're sitting in your inner tube dangling your feet and it scares the mess out of people. There are people that won't do it. There literally were people in the 70s that would not go in the water after watching this. Several of the kills were literally in 10 feet of water, which I don't necessarily believe with the size of that shark. That's
for a 25 foot that fat, no.
Yeah, not a great white. Absolutely not.
But yeah, but they egg it on with actual facts, alleged actual facts. From the books that Brody's reading, it's like, is it true that most shark attacks occur in 3 feet of water, 10 feet from the beach? Yes. It's like, well, hello, Florida. But it's like that's the kind of thing. Is this became a cultural phenomenon to make people afraid to go into the water. And that's, I think, is where that kind of fear and horror section goes. And John Williams's music does that. Like I was saying before, is I came to Jaws, I read the novel first. Like this came out obviously before I was born. I was way too non-existent, but would have been way too young to see this. I probably saw it before I should have, and I definitely read the novel before I should have. Because you're right, all the extraneous, the subplots that Peter Benchley put in, made these not likable characters. Is the affair between Ellen Brody and Matt Hooper was graphic and just made them both unlikable. Hooper was just an absolute jerk to be doing this.
Doesn't Hooper die in the book too?
Hooper dies in the book, and it's like you deserved it. He does. The only reason Hooper did not, if you believe some of the behind the scenes things, I think there's the movies that made us on Jaws. I know I've seen it somewhere. But Hooper did not die in the movie for a couple of reasons. One, I think just the popularity of the actor. But the other thing is they were filming the actual shark footage by these professionals in Australia, and they could not they had a dummy, a Matt Hooper dummy in the shark cage, and they could not get footage of the great white actually destroying or eating the dummy. They couldn't get it. So they had great footage of the shark attacking the empty cage and destroying it. So they were like, oh, well, he got out. He lives.
Interesting.
I think this movie in general was a good product of stuff like that. Things that you thought would have been disasters that they made fortuitous, like the fact that the shark didn't work. So then they had to rely very much on John Williams's score. They relied so much on the barrels, here's where the shark is, or the other shots. The shark doesn't work. You've got the hapless guys fishing off the dock, throwing in the Christmas ham or the roast or whatever, and it's just the dock moving up after them. This is what makes Spielberg a genius.
Or like during Post, they decided that they needed some type of beat when Hooper and Brody go out at night to look for the shark, and they didn't have any shot of the Ben Gardner boat and stuff like that. So they went to Verna Field's house near Encino, and they put the mock-up miniature boat in her backyard, and they dumped in I think baking soda or something, and they mixed in the pool to get it all murky to look like the ocean.
They added milk, actually. They added milk into the
powdered milk, and then they did the severed head gag, and that whole scene shot in her backyard pool in a couple days.
Yeah, I think that's one of the great stories about Jaws. It's got so many aspects that were disastrous or could have been even worse, and through ingenuity of editing, filmmaking from Spielberg and his whole crew, managed to really turn it around into something that is compelling and so neatly cut and so tightly cut and neatly edited. There's very little extraneous footage in the film, and that's not something you can say about our so-called modern summer blockbusters. The average runtime of films, whether it's huge franchise things like the MCU or the whole remake sequel itis that Hollywood's going through, tends to have films running at 2 hour 20, 2 hour 30, sometimes just approaching 180 minutes, 3 hours, and you think, for what? But I think Jaws, by being this landmark film and the arrival of the summer blockbuster, set the precedent, at least for a few decades, of how to make just a sublime film about a premise that on the surface feels like it's about something monstrous and otherworldly, perhaps, and tapping into these primal fears, but there is a human story there as well. And I think it's quite an achievement that I came across an interview with Peter Benchley, because he wrote the original treatment for the film, as well as the novel in 1974 that was published. And he was asked by Universal to strip out the relationship part, the affair, as you mentioned, and any kind of distraction from it being a pure adventure film. And I think by distilling it like that, it's maybe one of the few examples of executives making a good decision that paid off cinematically. And Spielberg got one of his friends to then, I think, is it Greg Gottlieb, I believe, came in and did the full rest of the screenplay and honed in on the idea of an adventure film rather than a film that had lots of other kind of storylines going on, which novels can do, but they don't necessarily translate off the book page to the screen. You don't have as much time, do you? Go on.
Well, and the fact, I thought that I did not know this until I went and did a little show. The novel was brand new when they when they decided to shoot this movie. The novel came out in 1974 and the movie in 75. They had they optioned the film rights before the novel was published. And they of course got Peter Benchley started. Yeah, but I would consider that like rare at this point in life. I can't think of another one that has happened, but it was just like, that was impressive. They got Benchley to start the screenplay, but yeah, they got Gottlieb in there to like, you know, rein him in, because he did have all of these subplots and side things. I mean, there was like, in addition to the affair, there was like a mafia subplot. There was a like Brody was a much less likable person. There was this whole kind of he had maybe been a dirty cop, or a cop that was at least a harder nosed New York cop that had been involved in some stuff in New York. Is why they moved out to Amity. I think Amity wasn't like an island of itself. It was just like some sort of little small town on Long Island. Quint was even sketchier, hard-nosed person. There was this whole thing where they fought about he was using as bait like a dolphin embryo as bait. So it just, you were in the novel, you were kind of pulling for the shark. It's like, no,
great, though.
is all of these guys just deserve it.
I
like
do
that.
love it though when Quint goes to the meeting and he draws on the chalkboard.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a completely different movie. I'm not saying it would have necessarily been bad, but it would have been a completely movie.
Oh, but I like that, you know, he is, in a sense, he's the same as in the book. He's still gruff, and because remember, there's the whole subplot in the movie where he keeps sabotaging the boat, because he's got this personal vendetta against the shark, and he doesn't want to call in extra reinforcements. Did we lose Dave? Oh, I think he's back. Oh, you back, Dave?
I think he's here and there. Hopefully he'll rejoin us in a moment.
I think I'm here, sort of.
You think you're here? Yeah, I was saying I love the whole subplot where Quint is going to war with a shark, and he literally sets a fire on the boat to distract Brody from making a radio call.
Possibly.
And then eventually destroys the radio and purposely kills his own engine. It's like,
well, that's...
Yeah, Quint kind of lost the plot there.
I think that's one of that's the kind of the biggest downfalls of the movie, is that you don't have enough backstory in Quint being blind crazy at that point for him to go all Ahab and sabotage the boat on purpose and sabotage the radio. You don't have enough of it.
You kind of do. Like when he tells the Indianapolis story, he mentions there's a specific friend of his, Henry something, and he thought he was asleep, and he was over to see him, and then he's talking to him for a bit, and he realizes he's not asleep. He's been severed at the waist, and he's just, because when you first meet Quint, you see all those, you know, shark bones in his, like in his hutch. He's just been doing this nonstop, and he's just like took it really personally and has this unhealthy vendetta against all sharks. And so now that one has come to his community and is killing people, he wants the the pride and to say he's killed the big bad alpha shark. Like when he says the taxidermist is going to have a heart attack when he sees what I've brought him.
Did we lose again?
You guys there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, cool.
Okay, so
I am here.
Let's talk about some of the key scenes. There's a couple of deaths in the film. Do you guys have one that you enjoy better than the others?
Oh, Quint. It's the most graphic, and he's fighting the shark, and it's like poetic and not really. I don't know if I would call it justice because the shark, but it's like, oh man, I didn't, because you knew that he was gonna get it. You kind of could tell that of all the characters telegraphed to get eaten by the shark, it was gonna be him because you knew that Brody was gonna be the hero. But the fact that the shark does it in an angry vendetta where it literally like beaches itself on the boat to try and sink it because it's so pissed off at him, and that was a really great scene.
Yeah, it does everything it physically can as a marine predator to make almost land for a couple of seconds to get that kill. And I think that's
and I like the fact
as well.
that death is. I think I like it that's purposeful in this. In the book, the Quint dies, but Quint dies simply because he's that last harpoon that he gets in the shark is his leg gets tangled in the rope and he's just drugged down and drowns. The shark doesn't actually eat him. So I think this is a much more satisfying, purposeful way that the shark has done this.
Well, that's interesting. Is that the way he dies in the book is similar to how Ahab dies in Moby Dick when he's going after him in the longboat.
Which is another reason why I think they changed it.
Yeah, and even though he's definitely an Ahab type character, and it's funny that Quint is the one with the largest fishing boat. Like when all those other bozos try and go out and catch the shark in these little tiny pleasure boats, and it's like, shouldn't they be taking something like what Quint has, or offering to pay him to?
Yeah. Well, they didn't believe that it was a 25-footer. They couldn't possibly believe that sort of thing. Hooper's probably the only one with like the bite radius and the actual science.
Oh, yeah,
that was the thing.
Like
what's up, Chris? Oh, that is cool. I didn't know that they made really like Jaws merch.
Oh yeah.
Because of course this was the summer blockbuster before summer blockbusters, and George Lucas in the Star Wars, made his money on the merch rights.
Is his comment before that Jaws was like a comment about the idea of Jawas crossed with Jaws? That is a scary thought. Jawas becoming
and
Jaws
actually.
On
Actually, there are those Jaws parody shirts that I've seen that have like a big pointy hat Jawa underneath the water and like that. Yeah, I've seen
really?
that.
Now I'm imagining a little.
Oh yes,
a fan edit of when you first see Jawas emerge on Tatooine with Luke and the droids, but to John Williams' score.
Up until that Mandalorian episode came along, I always thought from the skeleton of the crate dragon that it was kind of like a similar sized shark moving through, the sands.
I mean, that could be that kind of thing. Okay, I'll go with my favorite death of the thing, and I think it's ridiculous. I think it's ludicrous, but the death of the shark, okay, is when Spielberg just decides to defy all laws of physics. It's one of my favorite Spielberg quotes of all time. It's like, if I have had them on the edge of their seat, if I've had them invested in this movie for 2 hours, I can do whatever the hell I want. It's like I can just end it and boom. It's like, regardless of the fact that there's an entire Mythbusters episode proving that that's not going to happen, that it's completely different from the book, I think it's better than the book. Like, in the book, literally, the shark
gonna ask.
just gets tired. It's had too many harpoons in it for too long. Quint puts the final harpoon in it, and it's still swimming full bore, going right at Brody, and it stops. And it succumbs to its wounds, and it sinks slowly away into the black.
Well, I like in
Now,
the book.
that
I like in the movie.
go ahead.
It's not cinematic. It
They
might be more
also
realistic.
they also foreshadow the ending quite a bit from the moment Matt Hooper starts bringing those things on board, talking about how dangerous it is.
They do.
And, you know, all that kind of stuff. It's like, okay, I can see where we're going with this. And I admit, when Matt Hooper brought the little cage on board, I'm like, no, not a good idea. That's not going to hold up against Jaws. But even Quint kind of comes around to accepting it when he realizes his madcap insanity is not really paid off. And that's the one time he's finally kind of nice to Hooper when helping him with the cage.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it just immediately, and it's a very quick cut. Like I've watched it recently; it's fresh in my mind. It's a very quick cut from, oh, we're screwed, to, hey, Hooper, what kind of things have you got on the board? And then, oh, happy music. It cues to a whole different kind of score of them doing the montage of getting out the pointy stick, the bang stick, and putting together the cage. And
it's the score of the little sea shanty that Quint was singing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just gets it's a whole different tone at that point. But I mean, I think that's the thing, is it would not have been the same movie if the shark, and it gives you this the hallmark of the summer blockbuster. It gives you the tagline: "Smile, you son of a bitch." Boom.
I also like in the implication in a movie, an R-rated movie as gory as Jaws, he doesn't actually say the last word in that line. Oh, that's too horrible. We can't have him say the B word.
Oh, that's true. That is correct. No, you're right.
You literally see the shark bite
Smile,
this
you
guy's
son
leg
of
off
a boo.
Yeah, it kind of speaks to the weird censorship, the board of censors, and how people decide the adult rating of a film. You can have gore and death and grotesque, grisly endings and something very macabre, blood on screen. You know, a completely fictionalized version of a marine animal to be this, you know, terrifying monster. But the moment there's a curse word in, no, not in there. Let's take it out.
Heaven forbid you curse.
It'd be too much.
Well,
yeah. One other.
Here's another. Go ahead, Jim.
Oh, I was just gonna say, just relating it to a little trivia fact as well, relating it to the kind of, I guess, when you guys have been talking about the comparison between Jaws, the novel, and Moby Dick, and the Ahab illusion, there was an interesting fact I found that Universal originally, the director they wanted was Dick Richards, not Spielberg, and this would have been probably in that interim period of like 1974 when the novel was published, as we've described. It's a very quick turnaround to become an actual film. And they had him on board, and it was Richard Zanuck and David Brown, I think, were the heads of Universal at the time. And I think they're the names that will come out in documentaries the more you kind of read into the creation of the film. And
Zanuck's listed as a producer, maybe.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, they're the famous producing family. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they had Dick Richards around, and apparently he kept referring to the shark as a whale, and that was the red flag. They were like, "Nope, you're out. You're not even getting the genus, let alone the species of the arguably the main character right. Let's sub in someone who's a little more accurate with the details." And you know, thank God it was Spielberg, because the rest is blockbuster history,
as they say, history.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, and Spielberg was the right person for this movie. Because of all the adaptations and the things that he had to do. I watched some of the documentary things go down, and he regrets he was re-editing things after test screenings. He's like going back and making little tweaks. Is like the first test screening is the entire audience just jump scare when the shark comes up behind Brody, and the audience is going so crazy that they miss the classic line, "We're going to need a bigger boat." They miss it because they're still reacting. So Spielberg goes back in and adds more time in that space, so you get the reaction, and then you hear the line. They went back and they refilmed the Ben Gardner boat, and like where the head comes out, and the jump scare there. I think he did say that he regretted that one though, because that happened too early in the movie, and people were now watching. They were prepared to be scared, and it made the shark scare not as intense. But I mean, it was what it was, and it was the level of Spielberg's genius. This was what, Spielberg's second or third film ever?
Third. Well, I think second theatrical, but third feature overall, because he'd already done Duel and the Sugarland Express.
Yeah. And then I think he did 2 TV movies, Something Evil and Savage. But yeah, this was the third wide release in the cinema, in theaters.
Mm.
And a huge step up as well. A huge step up from what he'd done before. In comparison, he was I guess, a relatively low-key director until this project came about.
Yeah. Neat comparison to Jaws in the modern day Jersey Shore, where Jaws was actually based. It was. They talk about this in the film. The 1916 New Jersey shark attacks, I think. Neat comparison to Jaws, or is actually based on. Bring up on. You killing me! It's like, okay, bring it on to. Join us, please, on Tuesday on the.
I think that was a tiger shark as well, if I'm not mistaken.
I thought 16 was a bull shark.
Oh, bull shark! You're right, bull shark. Yeah, that's right. That was that one. Yeah, we're still streaming now, Doc, because we're only half hour into the show.
Yeah, we're here, man. We do a full hour and then some.
Yeah, I like that. The whole subplot of everybody in the town and the mayor and everybody worrying about closing the beaches. Like, even the lady who was on the beach who saw it happen when the Kittner kid got it, she's like, "Are you going to close the beaches?" and being like upset about it. I'm like, lady, did you not see what happened?
Exactly.
And it's like,
you were all on that beach. Like, your kids and your families were 10 feet away from when the dog gets it and when the kid gets it.
And they all ran into the water to get their kids out of the water, and they still want the beaches open. And it's like, not a single person in that group is smart enough to say, well, if we leave them open and it happens again and it comes out and it will come out because Mrs. Kittner was spreading the news everywhere that you knew there was a shark out there and you kept it open. Well, then nobody's ever going to come back to this island again.
But you know what? I think that first whole part of the movie, there's really kind of 2 separate movies, the setup and then the adventure. And I think the setup part, with all the political squabbling and this and that about keeping the beaches open, I think that's what keeps this a relevant movie for today. Because that is freaking what would happen in a town council or a city's board of selectmen or what. That's what would happen today, is they'd sweep it under the rug. There's, with anything, there's a cocaine bear out there. There's,
cocaine bear. My favorite bit is when the mayor says, "Oh yeah, and then there was a shark that supposedly injured some bathers." He tells the news.
Yes. Right. You know, that's exactly the level of smarminess that would happen. So I really think that's what keeps it relevant. Spielberg played this straight with like really kind of some normalized people. Now, of course, were this a modern day summer blockbuster, it would be different. I hope Spielberg or whoever owns the rights to this never allows this to be a dead solid straight remake.
I think they've done
Yes,
worse by
please.
allowing the sequels.
Now you're gonna get me going, because like, listen, Jaws itself is not my favorite of the Jaws franchise. I think it's the best, but hands down, not my
Okay.
favorite. Okay,
What is happening here?
because I want to go for the levels of ridiculousness that the franchise came. Jaws 3D, okay, that decided to go over the top and stupid. The effects are horrible, but I think just Dennis Quaid in that's like our introduction to Leah Thompson. That's some just absolutely hilariousness of Lou Gossett Jr. I think that is my guilty pleasure watch. Oh, and Jaws the Revenge, not for any of the main characters, but just the snarkiness of Michael Caine. You just have to watch it for Michael Caine's performance. And he's just like, I'm here for a paycheck.
Yeah, he said that it was worth missing out and collecting his Oscar filming this because it paid for like his summer house or his kid's college or whatever. No, Naladoc, it is not, and I don't believe you.
Or right there. I mean, Jaws, just if they made it today, it would be that entire first part where they're on the beaches and it would be an episode of Baywatch, right? But he's just Spielberg. No, it's a normal everyday crowd. I think they actually brought in locals for the crowd, and the entire cast is there. See, just telling. Right there.
He's trolling me because I don't like The Godfather. So yeah, I guess we can agree that Jaws forced The Godfather and shark movie. But he also says that Jaws would watch 100% differently without the score, and you're absolutely right because the score is a character.
It is correct, and this again was probably the kickoff of John Williams's career.
Yeah, he'd done TV and other little movies before then, but this really did it.
Yeah,
and also
definitely at that scale.
His performance, John Williams' work in Jaws, is what got him the gig in Star Wars. Because when Lucas needed a score, his buddy Spielberg is like, "Look, I got this guy, and he did a thing for me." Boom. So much of this is, again, why are we talking about Jaws on the Star Wars channel? Is this as a summer blockbuster, this coming out in the summer, is what led to the release of Star Wars in '77 in the summer to kick off the summer season. This John Williams, the score coming in, Lucas and Spielberg were buddies. I think this was the highest grossing movie of all time until Star Wars. And I think Spielberg famously took out a full-page ad in Variety congratulating Lucas when he dethroned Spielberg from having the highest grossing movie of all time.
Well, you had 3 movies manufactured to be blockbusters that summer: is Star Wars, Smokey and the Bandit, and The Spy Who Loved Me, all of which performed quite well. So the blockbuster really took off. Chris says, that's what I'm getting at, but don't want to get too into it on the chat. And he typed that when you were talking about how the politicking of it would totally happen today.
Oh yeah,
about how they would. So that's kind of what he's referring to with the modern day. So yeah, Naladoc says that he has a special place in his heart for Jaws 2 because it ran constantly on Showtime when he was a kid. So I watched it hundreds of times as a kid. I know my co-host on my channel, Scotty, likes Jaws 2 more than the first one, and he's like, "Why don't you like it, Kat?" And I said, "Well, the first half is relatively the same as the first half of Jaws 1. But then it's like they swap those 3 great characters on the Orca for a bunch of teenagers or college people in a boat. Yeah. And it's like, characters who I kind of didn't care for, and kind of rooting for the shark in the second one.
Well, that is kind of the thing. It's what I was talking about. It as if you remade it today, it would have to be like a bunch of teenagers, battling the shark and like Scooby Dooing it or whatever. Or an episode of Baywatch where they're
No.
half closed all the time. And
No, I push back. It wouldn't have to. It might well become that.
well, that's what it would be. That's what the studios and Hollywood would tell us it has to be. No,
Give it to a smaller studio. Give it to A24 until
Well,
they're
that's a
happy
whole
with it.
other-
Don't release it.
but
a whole
yeah,
other
I mean,
conversation.
if they redid Jaws in the '90s, it would have been exactly the cast and from I Know What You Did Last Summer.
But that's another whole conversation around movies of today, that they predominantly try and orient them around kids or teenagers or something. Like even Alien Romulus, it's like a bunch of young people with a simple and want to leave, and there's nothing interesting about the characters. And it's like, you can go back to making big summer blockbusters and stuff like this with, adults with adult problems and, maturity and stuff. It doesn't always have to be, a bunch of immature bozos and, and all the checking all the boxes of, oh, it's got to be sexy, it's got to have drugs, it's got to have violence. Oh, it's like, no, you don't need any of that.
No, you could totally market to
distractions.
old people at this point. Is like we have the money. Is
Mhm.
like that you're just stuck with like marketing, trying to remarket our childhood to us, so we will buy it again, which we totally will. Proof positive behind
Few
me.
examples. Just a few examples there.
That's what we will do. But we would buy new stuff too if you made something good.
Mhm.
You might have to
Oh,
turn your camera. They can't really see what's behind you from the border that cuts off.
Oh,
Oh yeah.
we would buy it again. It's like, look, there's my original 12 Star Wars figures and the early thing and figures and the Ghostbusters signed. Yeah. We'll buy it again, but again, we'd buy new stuff too.
Yeah, just going back to the score, this I
Yeah.
looked up. It's actually the 26th project from John Williams. So
What were before?
okay, I can read the list. It's a lot of smaller films, and then in the 60s, there's Daddy-O, there's The Killers, there's The Rare Breed with James Stewart and Maureen O'Hara.
He directed something
How
with
to
James Stewart and
He
Maureen
did it with
O'Hara?
Jimmy Stewart
Yeah.
and oh wow.
Yeah. These seem like I don't know how.
Oh
to
wait, are
class
you talking
them
about
as
John? You're talking about John Williams stuff, right?
John Williams
Yeah.
scores?
Oh,
yeah,
okay, never
in
mind. I thought
previous
you were talking about
projects.
Spielberg.
Oh, going in here.
No,
There
no.
you go. Sherry's into it. Valley of the Dolls, Goodbye, Mr. Chips, The Towering Inferno.
Yeah, so he went from doing these kind of, I guess, rom-com type things in the late 60s to then the 70s era being the Poseidon Adventure, the Towering Inferno, some of these kind of big-scale disaster movie type things. And so it kind of came together, and then, yeah, exactly as Sherry's saying, it's the Sugarland Express is the first collab.
And way
in
back then, in
big
those early
terms.
days, he was credited as Johnny Williams.
Yeah.
Now,
It's
see,
almost like he took on a different moniker as he
Jerry's
became more
brought up the
cinematic.
Towering Inferno. That's more of kind of what Jaws strikes me as a 70s disaster movie, as opposed to a horror movie. Is it just it's on the same level of what all they were doing, because that's what they were putting out at that point. They're putting out the Towering Inferno, the Poseidon Adventure, Airport
Earthquake.
74, Airport 75, Earthquake. That's one of the casting decisions, is that they got Roy Scheider because one of the early thoughts for Brody was Charlton Heston. But they were just like, we can't put Charlton Heston in this film because you immediately know Charlton Heston's going to kick the shark's ass.
Yeah, no, they're not going to believe he's going to be this meek kind of guy who's, even though Brody has all the right ideas and tries to do the right thing at first, he keeps caving to people. Kind of like how the coroner initially says, oh yeah, it's a shark attack. But then he changes his mind because the mayor pressures him to do so. Another reason they chose Spielberg to make this movie is because of this film, Duel, a TV movie which is basically the same plot, a mad trucker driven by a very famous stunt driver chasing this guy for no apparent reason on the road, shot throughout areas in Southern California. That
Yeah.
they
A stunning
decided,
film.
of all things, to go 4K. Spielberg released it.
Well, no.
And that was, and Spielberg said that too when he read the script from Jaws. He's like, "Man, this is like the movie I did before," and he thought, "Oh yeah, 2 months it'll be easy," but then the boat and all the stuff on on the Orca was shot 8 miles south of the southeast coast of Martha's Vineyard, and one of the things that Richard Dreyfuss said recently that he didn't really like shooting the movie was that, yeah, you always have to hurry up and wait, as the saying goes, but they would say have a sailboat in the background. Well, they have no way
Yeah.
communicating with the sailboat, and they'd have to wait for like an hour and a half for it to move, and then it would turn around and go the other way, and they have to wait long.
Well, that was a thing that Spielberg was very conscious of, and is when they were shooting, they wanted nothing else in the background, and they were not shooting very far off the coast because they needed it to be shallow to make the mechanical shark work.
Yeah.
So it could like sit on bottom, and so it was easier. But he just shot it in such a way that you don't see land until the last shot. And you see that they're closer in than you would think. There's a little bit of land.
You can see the sandbar, yeah.
Back in, yeah.
And that's, I think, adds to the tension. And oh my gosh, Brody's going to get it right when he's at the beach. What was I going to say? So, my favorite story from production of the film is when they were on the Orca and they were filming, and they have the production boats that are aside of the actual picture boat, and something went wrong. The Orca was taking on water; it was sinking, and the guys on the speaker, like the assistant director's, like, "Get the actors off the boat! Get the actors off the boat!" Repeatedly, he's like, "Get the actors off the boat!" And then finally, somebody in the support boat's like, "Fuck the actors! Save the sound department!" Because
Yeah.
you lose all your sound, because you'll lose all the production stuff of the day.
Yeah, and they thought at a certain point that in that accident, I think that they were going to lose a lot of the footage they'd shot because the cameras got wet. But then they were like, "Oh wait, you developed that film in a saltwater solution, so it should be fine." And they just sent it away immediately, and it was fine.
Yeah.
They shot this on. I read this as well as like a new type of film. Or at the time they shot it on like Eastman Kodak film as opposed to what they had been doing beforehand.
I would look at that dust collection. Oh, thanks, Doc. My collection's a dust collection.
Oh yeah, look at there. Yes, Robert Shaw wasted on set all the time. I mean, that's a famous thing. Is you would think that the USS Indianapolis thing is, I think famously he shot that the first time drunk. Is he thought it would add authenticity, but
that was the very second day of the shoot too.
Yeah, and it just sucked. is that copy did not work, so much so that as soon as he sobered up, he's like on the phone to Spielberg going, "I'm so sorry," and fixes it and does it the next day. Allegedly in one take, dead sober, they do that, and it's a much better thing. But no, there were so many problems with Robert Shaw during this. Like he literally had to leave the country immediately after filming this because the IRS was after him for tax evasion. Like when they were on a break from shooting, when Robert Shaw was not being used, they had to fly him from Martha's Vineyard to Canada. So he was not in the country. He could not be in the country for so many days, or they were just going to come and lock him up. So, but yeah, just had a problem and allegedly knew he had a problem. He's taking drinks between shots and, but who knows how much of that, what he shot is him drunk and adding to his performance and what's.
Well, I think he learned after that first day that, yeah, he shouldn't do that again, because that's why he was so apologetic about it. So I doubt that he kept binge drinking throughout the shoot, because when he showed up that day, he had to be carried onto the boat.
Yeah.
By people. So,
some of it allegedly he kind of did, because he and he did some things that were intoxicated that probably actually helped the movie, because he and Dreyfuss hated each other during this, and you see that between Brody and Quint, is their genuine dislike was not so much the acting as real. Is
A lot of people
I think at one point, while intoxicated, Robert Shaw shot Dreyfuss in the face with a fire hose.
A nice little civil.
Exactly, Sherry. Is I want to see, and I'm like, why did you wait to put out the? Or if this is a different one, I don't know. But there's Jaws at 50, which is a documentary that's coming out, I think, July 11th.
Yeah.
But it's like, why are you waiting to do that till almost a month after the actual 50th anniversary?
Well, I said I think it's exclusive to Peacock right now because it's a Universal thing, and then it's going to go. I think it is from the sounds of it, but then it maybe goes wider elsewhere. I don't know. Because it is a Universal film, so it shouldn't really be exclusive to Hulu or Disney Plus or anything like that, even though it's going to drop there. Kind of like when, they did that third Star Trek reboot movie, and it's like, it's the 50th anniversary year. Why don't you wait to release it in September when it's the actual 50th anniversary?
Well, it's a lot of things too. It's like, why didn't you schedule Star Wars Celebration 2027 on and around,
May 25th.
May, yeah.
That way you could have had a screening at one of the auditoriums on May 25th.
Mm-hmm.
Find out what the first showtime was at Grauman's that day, because it was only limited release that day. It wasn't in a bunch of LA theaters, only really playing around there. Find out what that was and play it in Grauman's on May 25th for the 50th anniversary. That would be something.
Yeah. Well, and then let's talk about like release of this. Is Jaws made all of the money that it did. Released, its initial release was 400 screens.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think
403.
Yeah, and then when it went into wide release, I think it was only somewhere around 1,000.
Yeah,
this was groundbreaking and amazing for the time, how much money it made on how little money it made, and this is it going over budget. See, it's why we can't have nice things anymore. Is the astronomical budgets for all of the things that you have to have, and not worried about good storytelling and tight editing and just shooting. This went almost triple the number of days that it should have shot. It went over, and still came in at a reasonable budget, even adjusted for inflation, very likely.
Yeah, an initial budget that ran over and kept spiraling out of control. But even back then, this is the context of 1975, so the total ended up being $8 million, which is absolutely minuscule compared to the hundreds of millions now thrown on so-called popcorn summer blockbusters. But back then must have felt like a huge financial hit to Universal. But it made $260.7 million globally in its first year. So that's something along the lines of like a 3,100% return on investment. So
yeah,
you could argue it was kind of good value for Universal to let this one hit the 400 plus screens.
Good value, and the fact that it's making money. I mean, the studios at this point, or whoever reports on whatever is a successful movie or not, are semi ridiculous. Like the Thunderbolts is being declared a flop, and it made more than double its budget. Not triple its budget, but more than double. How is that not successful?
Yeah,
Kat, you're muted.
Because they spent 180 million to make the movie, and so it made 360 initially that broke even, but they only made after that, I think, capped at around 380, 384, but they had like probably $100 million marketing spend behind that, so they lost money.
That
That's the
shouldn't
problem. It's the
count.
promo
That
night.
was your own dumbass fault to invest that amount in, like, like that. I dislike the fact that you've got to include that amount on your marketing budget. If you have to market a Marvel film that you've already marketed and alluded to in Brave New World was the marketing for Thunderbolts.
And it's also like that's the same marketing spends or near there, probably a little less that they had when the MCU first started, but nobody knew what it was. So it stands to reason you should require less marketing. But I mean, I know Brave New World really hurt the box office as well because that was just a bad movie and that put a sour taste in people's mouths for Marvel. But but yeah, that's it. The marketing spends in movies like this is just crazy. Like for instance, due to the delays and production problems on the latest Mission Impossible movie, the production budget ballooned to 400 million.
Yeah.
But the marketing spend was like 100. So it needs to make $1 billion to break even, and it's capped out around 515. And so it's not. They're going to lose like $250 million on that movie. And they lost money on the last one they did too because of the Barbenheimer phenomenon. So it's like crazy. Two massive films, each making north of 500 million each. So a combined $1 billion box office for two movies, and they both lost money. It's mind-boggling.
It's bloated.
Mhm.
It's overly done. Is what they're doing with it. It's and
That's a good point, Chris.
yeah.
He says
They are doing something this weekend. There is something because I've seen photos of Richard Dreyfuss like on a boat. I think he's possibly in Martha's Vineyard this weekend.
Yeah. Well, I think down in Long Beach, every once in a while they have a screening at the beach where people sit in like their inner tubes or whatever in the water in a little corralled off section while they play it on a big screen. And that was kind of neat. I don't know if they've done that recently, but yeah, because Richard is the only one of the main guys still around, and I think the actress who plays Ellen is still alive. I think I don't remember. I know the story that the only reason Jaws 4 is a movie is because she was married to one of the studio heads, and he wanted to make her a movie, which is why it just got weird. But
again, Michael Caine, amazing.
Could argue why she
worth watching just for that.
And I wonder if it has to do with what they're thinking box office forecasts, maybe. Like, oh, maybe there's not much out in late August. They figured it'll do better. I don't know. It's a bit odd.
Yeah, to me, August time seems to be when the theaters, cinemas are a kind of in-between phase between like the end of the summer blockbuster period and then going into autumn or fall, where you tend to get the horror genre creeping back in. So August just feels like a really strange time to try and organize any kind of cinematic event, even if it's a relatively smaller anniversary. Yeah, they kind of missed the boat on that. Sorry for the terrible pun.
But to Sherry's point about whether or not they'll touch on any of those juicy stories on the documentary, Spielberg did mention in his introduction that now that so much time has passed, he feels he could tell other little tidbits without getting. So you might hear some new stuff. I'm usually wary about documentaries like this because the more time has passed between an event, the more faded your memory gets, and you start misremembering things. Like for instance, the what is it? The Star Wars archives books that were put out, those giant tomes that put out in 2015 about the making of Star Wars, and it's like, well, they were all modern interviews, whereas the 3 J.W. Rinsler books were sourced from the actual production notes and original marketing and interview materials back in the 70s. So the Rinsler books would be the ones that are more accurate,
Right.
So I'm kind of, but we'll see. I'll definitely watch the documentary when it drops in July.
Yeah, is I want to see that. It's like, well, that was the thing I was looking at. I'm going through IMDb and I'm typing in Jaws and looking, and it's like, oh, Jaws at 50, dude. I would have watched that last night, like right after the thing. It's like, but no.
Yeah, I still think there's value in bringing back together the cast and crew if they're still around or still active, and telling those stories. I think it can end up being like a kind of sit around the campfire and reminisce, not so much knowing exactly, photographically what happened on day 37 of the shoot, which should have been never existing because it should have been half the time
Yeah.
that they were filming for. But yeah, I do like the Star Wars archive books. I still think there's a lot of value to them because they're kind of neat little tomes that are very dense with background info, which sometimes it's nice to just have it collated in a neat design that you can refer to. Those Rinsler books, they're big tomes and they're hard to get, so
Yeah.
you can see why there are other ones available.
Yeah, and you can still see Dreyfuss. Dreyfuss is semi-regular on the con circuit. You can see Dreyfuss and talk to him about Jaws and get his autograph. I haven't ever done that, but he's been in Raleigh several times at GalaxyCon here.
Really? That's a surprise.
Yeah.
Because he hasn't. I mean, he's not like officially retired or anything. It's just that a lot of people notoriously don't get along with him. Or he doesn't get along with a lot of people. So and I'm surprised they invited him back for the 50th anniversary of Jaws, considering what happened at the last screening that he did.
He's one of those people at a con. It's like Anthony Daniels, where you hit him on a good day, he's great. You hit him on another day. It's like changing life choices on why I'm here, but it's just like, yeah, because I've purposely I'll skirt by because he's like a cool person to like see and listen to, as I'm not getting an autograph because again, he's the only one really left standing. It's not like a cast piece, a project that I could ever complete, and that I hate that.
Yeah, because I don't think any of the child actors playing the Brody's kids have ever been. I mean, it's not to my knowledge on doing con circuits or anything like that.
Yeah.
I think the kid who played Alex Kittner, even though he's in one scene, would probably get a lot of autograph.
The kid that played Alex Kittner, allegedly, this is another story. Is I don't think the lady is still alive, is the mom anymore, but
no,
like years later, found him like running a seafood restaurant. Is she like comes in to eat and there's a big reunion there. Yes, exactly. Sherry can be a jerk.
Well, I was trying to be really timid about that. He did a screening in Massachusetts, Q&A at a public place, and he just went on this really rant that came out of nowhere, and a bunch of people were getting and walking out. It's like, and then the venue apologized to everybody, refunded. It's like, it's more credence to the
I think he specifically will get on like political rants out of nowhere, and it's just like, we want to hear about you and the movies, not how you feel about other stuff.
Yeah, the one new thing that I heard that he said recently was that, as I mentioned earlier, that he thought filming Jaws was really boring because it was even more sitting around and waiting than usual. And it's like, okay, whatever,
Yeah, you're kind of throwing a lot of shade on something that made you a household name.
I
mean, there's a way to convey some of the, negative experiences of something and still not come across as very like tetchy and cranky. So it's kind of a shame someone would do that, but I guess if you know, then don't pay him too much attention.
But yeah, this movie just kind of redefined a blockbuster, and the idea that because to your point, Dave, people weren't going to the movies in droves in the summer. You'd have crap movies like Beach Blanket Blingo, whatever it's called. I can't even say it.
What?
That type of crap coming out, and it's like, nobody would, because people weren't going there. But Jaws, because it was specifically about the summer, about shark, and all that, and it's like it took off. And so when you had those other three films, Smokey, Star Wars, and Bond coming out the same summer, it's like, oh, we've caught something now. We've tapped into something, and and that was sort of the beginning of the end for movies that had long legs, because they became more obsessed with the opening weekend tallies. And finally, when physical media came around and more affordability in the 90s they already had VHS and Betamax and stuff in the early 80s, but super expensive compared to the 90s. And then it just it is unfortunate that movies are they live and die in opening weekend box office, which is so messed up. But yeah.
Well, I think like Jaws was probably in theaters all summer.
Oh yeah, and they would, because it's like if it's a successful movie, since there's no such thing as home media back then, they would keep bringing them out, and it was,
And what
yeah,
Star Wars was probably in theaters for close to a year.
yeah. The last movie I remember, which
Mhm.
played for like 8 or 9 months, was Titanic,
Mm,
and that was December '97, and it was still playing through summer '98 regular showtimes because it was just for some reason it was just that popular. But you haven't seen that since then, you know.
right.
Like even Phantom Menace, which almost joined the $1 billion club, only had a regular, month, 2 month theatrical engagement, and then they gave it a week-long re-release in December before the VHS release in April of the following year, which is crazy that they waited 11 months to put that out. Uh, but yeah, you just don't see
Well,
those lengthy
at
theatrical
this
runs
point,
anymore.
the movie industry is killing the movie industry itself because you can get some, not all, but you can get some theatrical releases at home while it's still in the theaters. You pay $30 for it, but $30 for
Mhm.
a family of 5 streaming is still a bargain
Well,
compared
yeah,
to
it's like
what it costs to go to the cinemas.
the
Yeah,
latest
there's no comparison.
Yeah, the latest Final Destination film, the most successful in the franchise, which everybody says is the best. All the other ones are in the 40% critic range because they're bad, and this one had like a 92% critic rating. It made
I
like a
mean,
100 million more, just about, than any of the other ones, and it's already on VOD 1 month
Yeah.
after theatrical. It's like, what's the? I don't get. Maybe they think they're saving money by not having to do a second marketing blitz for home media later on. Maybe that's the thinking behind it. But it's like, the last movie I could think of that was building legs was Godzilla Minus One, and it was word of mouth and it was popular,
Mm.
but they had to pull it from theaters because they had a deal with Legendary, because you have the Japanese Toho Godzilla movies, and then you have the Universal or the Warner
Yeah.
Brothers MonsterVerse. The rule is a Toho movie or a Legendary movie, vice versa, has to be out of theaters at least 2 months before the other studio's one opens. So even though Godzilla Minus One was still doing gangbusters business in January, oh, it's right up to that mark because the MonsterVerse movie's coming out 2 months. So we got to pull it. I was like,
Mm.
ah. So it would have done. I mean, it still was a major return on investment, obviously, uh, and that's something that they could look to figure out how to save money. Like, what was it? They spent. I think the director said the ultimate budget was like 12. Production budget was 12 million, and even with the creator, the budget was also production budget 80 million. And those visual effects are some of the best you've ever seen. It looks so real. Uh,
yeah, stunning film.
and it's like, how do you, and Gareth Edwards was talking about how they shot the whole movie like guerrilla style on location, and that's how you save money. I think
Yeah.
how these budgets are getting bloated is that they kind of they spoil themselves. They bring all these big trailers, all these all this big stuff. It's like, some of the best movies ever made were shot guerrilla style with people just scraping to get by. Because it is true that the less you give the
Rocky
director,
running down the street in Philadelphia out of the back of a van, just
yeah,
cold,
and it's
and
like,
everybody in the background is natural. It's real people.
Part of it, yeah.
and the less money you give directors, the more creative they're going to be if they're good, and the
Mm.
movie, is gonna. Oh, oh, yep. Sherry says Beach Blanket Bingo was a favorite. Saw it as a kid. I've seen various versions of that popping up. I guess that was part of a series of different summer movies like that. I get the titles intermixed all the time, but they always
There was
pop
a
up
whole
on Voodoo.
thing with Frankie and Annette. That was a whole series of movies with Frankie Avalon and Annette Funicello.
Mm. Chris Forsyth says that Final Destination. It might have been. I only ever saw the
I have
first
not
one, and I
seen
thought it
that.
was. I saw the first one and thought it was crap. I did like the bit from the trailer, the scene of Tony Todd, because he knew he was going to die, and he told the filmmakers that, and they said, "Why don't you improvise your last lines?" And he was basically telling people that you never know when death is going to come for you, and enjoy life and don't take it for granted, that kind of thing, which was
Yeah.
kind of sweet because he knew he was dying of stomach cancer when they were filming it, which is
Oh.
really sad because he was so cool. Uh, but that's another story. But yeah, it's like that. Jaws is followed by Star Wars. It's kind of like Star Wars is really the one that solidified the change of pace for what a blockbuster. Because Jaws wasn't planned to be a blockbuster; it just kind of happened.
Right. It just happened.
And
Did
you didn't
anything
have.
happen in 76 between the two?
I don't think
Like
so
Jaws was
because
75. Was there anything big in
I don't
76?
think so because I don't think they were really planning that or expecting that because the turnaround time was probably around 2 years. So
Yeah.
but I don't recall. But in '78, you had that, and then it's like I forgot that Robert Shaw died really shortly after, within 3 years.
Yeah, 3 or 4 years after this
3
movie.
years. It's crazy.
Oh, oh, here we go. Is we're forgetting is Rocky came out in 76 in the summer.
What? It was a summer release. Okay, I forgot. I didn't realize it was a summer release. I thought that was later in the fall.
Yeah, Rocky earned more than other films released in the summer of 76. It doesn't.
But that's a movie that they weren't really planning on being a blockbuster either. It just because Stallone famously championed that whole thing himself, and it just happened to resonate with people to the
Also,
tune
The
of winning
Omen.
Best Picture.
The
Yeah,
Omen
but
came
it's
out in
another
76.
thing where they're not really thinking, blockbuster. It's like, oh, it's a horror movie, and uh, but Star Wars was big,
Yeah,
and
I think
then Raiders, and we're off to the races.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've just read up as well. 1976, you had some critically acclaimed films, but they weren't on
Oh
the
yeah,
scale of Jaws or Star Wars. You have Taxi Driver, All the President's Men, so some like really acclaimed films, but
oh yeah.
nothing that is the summer popcorn blockbuster that Jaws is kind of universally agreed to have created, and then
Yeah.
as you say, the momentum.
IMDb lists the biggest summer blockbusters, and it's Jaws, The Omen, which was apparently bigger than Rocky, Star Wars, Grease in 78, Rocky 2 in 79, Empire in 80, Raiders in 81, E.T. in 82, Return of the Jedi in 83, Indiana Jones.
Yeah, you had the Network, Carrie, Silver Streak, The Outlaw Josie Wales, Family Plot, which is Hitchcock's final film, I believe. All set in 1976. Shout at the Devil, that was another. Marathon Man, The Duel, and yeah, those were all 76.
Yeah.
Carpenter's first film, Assault on Precinct 13, not a blockbuster though. The
No,
70s, for my money, is the best decade in American film.
but
easily.
Carbon, that was a good one. That even made a. I think the remake of that was nice as well. Assault on Precinct 13.
And then Sorcerer,
it was a
a
reasonable
remake of
remake.
Wages of Fear. That was also had Roy Scheider in it. That got crushed by Star Wars, unfortunately. For my money, I'd say that's William Friedkin's best film, released in June 1977. But yeah, 70s were awesome for the movies.
Well, yeah, because we're sitting here, and if you go further down the rabbit hole, is they're like, it says the Bad News Bears. That's a good. That's
a good one, Walter Matthau.
I like that. Is similar to that one. That concept that I like is Six Pack with Kenny Rogers. That was. But you're sitting here going, won the summer against, like Star Wars won the summer against Smokey and the Bandit. Grease won the summer against Jaws 2. Rocky 2 won the summer against Alien. So, they're fighting back some big. It becomes a head-to-head competition.
Well, that was also when they realized that the franchise was like a concept that they could start embracing more.
Well, it does, yes, because so many of these are a franchise movie versus a franchise movie. In 81, Raiders wins the summer against Superman 2.
Well, Raiders wasn't known to be a franchise at the time. That was still
against first. Yeah,
that's true. E.T. against Rocky 3. Return of the Jedi wins against a great little film, but not a friend against War Games.
June 1982 was one of the best months in cinema. You had E.T., Blade Runner, The Thing. There's another one I'm forgetting. That'd be great to do that as a triple feature in June 82.
Well, and it becomes
a lot of variety
that way.
as well.
It becomes that way more and more as you go. Like, think of movies that came out in what's the magic year? Like 1985. How many? Amazing movies in 1985. Amazing movies in 1984.
Yeah.
Just in the summer, we're talking Indiana Jones, Temple of Doom, Ghostbusters, Gremlins. Which why Gremlins didn't come out at Christmas, I don't even know why. What were they thinking?
Yeah, And this year, the biggest one, probably bigger one, 40th anniversary of Back to the Future. That's a big one. It's funny. There's a theater in my area that put it back in theaters for 1 night or 2 nights as a Fathom event in October 2023. Then they put part 2 as a 2-night event in October 2024. So I expect part 3 will follow this October. Not sure what the logic is of the scheduling, but because I remember they did all 3 Lord of the Rings extended cuts without the intermissions in 3 consecutive nights, and I did that January of last year, and it was awesome.
Yes. Yeah, they're just looking ahead. There's so many tons coming up in the next couple of years. The 40th anniversaries is a huge kind of thing. Is, you know, Back to the Future, all of this, Top Gun next year, tons of great stuff. But anyway, we are digressing and we are going further down the rabbit hole than need be. But yeah, Jaws, absolutely amazing. The first summer blockbuster ever. So much of Jaws and its kind of guerrilla production, low budget, high reward summer blockbuster John Williams score led to Lucas's success in Star Wars. Yes, exactly. Da-da, 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 da-da. It's great. Final thoughts, everybody?
The hashtag the shark did nothing wrong. Bruce, it's unfortunate. All 3 of them were eventually destroyed. And the one that's at the Academy Museum that you and I saw, Dave, that's hanging is like a copy of, like, they got a hold of the blueprints of what the original ones looked like or whatever, and it was a some guy had made a replica and had it for decades of his own accord, and then they provided that for the Academy Museum to make another markup.
Show me
Yes.
way to go.
I'm tired and I want to go to bed. Let me drink about an hour ago.
That was
my head.
Great scene too, is they've got that going, and then the boat, and yeah, such a great.
I do love when Ellen is all uneasy when Quentin is talking about how they're going to go put in a Spanish port for good women, and she's just all distressed that her husband is going off on a boat with such a person.
See, again, it's you get a different vibe after, like, when I saw the movie, I'd already read the book, and it's like, look, damn it, Ellen Brody, you can't say anything about this after what you did with the Hooper. No. Stop it. But yeah, I love the movie. I think it's great, and I can't imagine a time. I can't imagine where we would be without summer blockbusters. It's just, and I don't know why we didn't have that before this, because you would have thought back in the 50s and the 60s, people would want to be going to the movies in the summertime because of why?
It's
air
too hot.
conditioning.
Yeah.
That is a huge draw. Never underestimate it.
Well, that's why people would pack the beaches and the lakes to get all cool off that way, you know.
Right, but you would have thought air-conditioned theaters, that's where you want to be. But anyway, thank you all for joining us. Please join us again. Like you said, like Chris was saying, join us on the Tuesday night. We've got a lot of stuff, events, things coming up. We've got, you can see me live and in person at Rebel Scum Con in Texas, Frisco, Texas in August. That is sponsored by our friends at VIP Home Theaters and all of our other friends sponsoring that as well. Arctic Wig's new sponsor, Galactic Pictures, Plum Askew, Mood, Andy's Boat Repair, My MTA, Jennifer LaSalle, and I can't ever say this correct. Coldbrookdale, the candle company. We got some more sponsors coming on that as well.
Andy's
yeah, we've got some more sponsors coming on as well. We'll get that added in this week. And a special aside for you guys on the programming notes, June has 5 Sundays. So normally there would not be let's try that again. Normally not be a Sunday show next week. Next week is the 5th Sunday. Yeah.
It is, yeah.
Is normally there would not be a show next week, but since it is Pride Month, we are going to have a special Pride themed show happening next Sunday, I believe at noon. So please tune in and see. I think it's going to be Mark Von Olen and another cast of hosts and friends from the shows. So please go ahead and tune in that, and you can enjoy a new content on your 5th Sunday, which you would normally not see. Then again, back in July, go ahead and join us for the Jedi Archives on that first Sunday. And then we've been building to this one for a while. What's going to happen on the 2nd Sunday, people? That'll be right after the debut of little summer movie about
this is just a little one.
little summer movie
Called
about
Superman.
some character from another planet.
Little alien finding his way.
Old man yelling at clouds. The episode is going to be very exciting.
Oh my gracious! Have you like the new little teaser, the latest trailer? They keep getting worse. They do. I can't help it. But anyway,
that is our next episode, by the way.
Oh yeah, our next episode. I've already got my tickets. I'm gonna see it on the preview day on July the 8th.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you have a few days to simmer on that one.
Indeed. All righty. Well, anyway, thanks everybody for watching. We will see you next time.
Thank you. May the force be with you.
Always.